Patricia Gibson. Madam Deputy Speaker, the motion before the House this evening, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about the defending public services. And I sat last week and I listened very carefully to the Prime Minister's speech following the Queen's speech and heard the phrase life chances repeatedly being used in such a way that may suggest that meaningful and fundamental measures to mitigate against inequality were announced in this address. Indeed, a life chances strategy was even set out. But the government cannot have it both ways. On the one hand, we hear the incessant banging of the drum for austerity, and on the other, we have rhetoric which is supposed to convince us that the appalling life chances of too many of our citizens, too many of our children, are being addressed. We have an agenda from this government that seems content to see children living in poverty with all that that means. That is not consistent with a life chances strategy, and it is not consistent with a social justice agenda. I have spoken before in this chamber, Madam Deputy Speaker, as have so many others before me, about what poverty really costs. It costs families their hope and their motivation. It robs children of their confidence and the self-esteem that would enable them to reach their true potential. It robs those subject to the vagaries of it, of their physical and too often their mental health. Quite simply, it puts people into an early grave after a lifetime of suffering. Children in poverty are more likely to self-harm. Young men in poverty are twice as likely to commit suicide. And what is the response of this government, which says it is committed to a life chances strategy? It slashes support for disabled people and it cuts support for the working poor. What is required, of course, is a credible plan to look at the rising costs facing low-income families. It would be laughable if it were not so ridiculous and painful that we have a government that seeks to send parents to parenting classes but fails to fundamentally address the fact that far too many parents are finding it extremely difficult to put food on the table. What this programme for government cannot hide, despite strategies and platitudes set out last week, is that the watchword for this government has been and continues to be austerity. Yeah. This austerity is defined by cuts to the public sector across the board, hitting, as it always will, the most disadvantaged, stripping workers of their rights and the working poor reduced to using food banks. Our Prime Minister has told us, and I quote, "You cannot have true opportunity without true equality. I want us to end discrimination and finish the fight for real equality in our country today." If he is really serious about what he has said, if he's serious about helping working families who are struggling hard, he must urgently look again at the impact of the austerity agenda on working and low-income families. We are heading for an even more confirmed position where generations are glued to the bottom rung of the ladder of opportunity. And this, of course, will be blamed on a lack of moral fibre, perhaps even blamed on poor parenting. But the real cause is a lack of opportunity, of access to employment, a decent income, to proper childcare and suitable housing. We're all aware of the government's scrapping of legal commitments to tackle child poverty in the Welfare Reform and Work Bill, the revision of legislation which introduced new measures of poverty, but which bizarrely did not include income. But measuring poverty is not enough. We know it exists. The cruel changes in support for families will put too many families under intolerable pressure. If the government is serious about ending poverty and increasing the life chances of all children, the narrative which suggests that a person living in poverty is a result of decisions made by that individual, that narrative needs to change. Low income is not merely a symptom of poverty, but a direct cause of reduced life chances. Yeah. Any life chances strategy has to recognise what factors militate against people's life chances, and if it does not do that, it is doomed to fail. The 4-year freeze on working age benefits, including child tax credits, working tax credits and GSA, will see families lose up to 12% from the real value of their benefits and tax credits by 2020. How does that improve life chances for those living in poverty? How does that help the nearly 4 million people who experience persistent poverty for 2 years out of the last 4? It's a shocking state of affairs when most children living in poverty today in the UK have at least one parent in work. There needs to be some creative thinking about how to tackle the lack of reliable work that pays enough for families to make ends meet. Any new approach must complement, not replace, current efforts to measure and tackle child poverty, measuring incomes and providing safety nets for the vulnerable and those in need. That should be our priority. Absolute child poverty is projected to increase from 15.1% to 18.3% by 2021, a result of planned tax and benefit reforms. Disabled lone parents with young carers are set to lose £58 a week as a result of the loss of the disability premium under universal credit, placing additional care burdens on young carers. If the much heralded Life Chances strategy is to mean anything, it would benefit from being guided by the SNP's proposed social equality bill, which would strengthen social security entitlements by restoring work allowances for low-income workers and single parents. It would actively pursue ways to break down barriers to employment for disabled people and address the gaps in support that have been created by slashing support for disabled people. None of this is rocket science. All it needs is a recognition that poverty is a scourge and we must eradicate it, and that all that is required is political will, political choice. Warm words and talk of strategies will not lift families out of poverty. Neither will empty rhetoric. Universal credit has failed. It has not incentivised work. It has punished those on low pay. Any system of welfare must be based on need, compassion and respect. These principles should also guide any strategy seeking to improve life chances for all. The Government should reflect on this today if it is serious about tackling the corrosive and life-limiting effects of poverty.